exactly.
That's fine.
Okay. All right. So I'm gonna let everyone in now, okay? And then
Yeah.
we'll start. So, karibu.
Thank you. Hi everyone. I'm Alex Mlewa, and I'm the leader of the WAWE Youth Group. And the purpose of the WAWE Youth Group is really just for young people of Tanzanian descent to connect with their culture and with the development of Tanzania, as well as to try and strengthen cultural ties within our two communities. So one of our current projects is the Health Matters project, where we're working with Kupeda to raise funds to buy diabetes testing kits for a hospital in Tanzania, and we've been supported by, all the doctors, especially our patron, Dr. Gideon. So really, the point of this call is, as Dr. Nassib said, just to talk about the young people's experience with COVID and how it's affected them. So I will introduce some of the young people now, and then we'll just get into the questions. So, Erin, would you like to introduce yourself?
Okay.
Erin, would you like to introduce yourself again?
Thank you.
Okay. Hi, my name is Erin, and I'm 8 years old. I go to St. Philip Evans, and I'm in year 4. I like to do art and watch anime.
Okay, thank you, Erin. And Tariq, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Tariq. I'm 10 years old and I'm in year 6. My school is St. Peter's RC Primary School and I love to play football.
Okay, thank you. And then Erica, would you like to introduce yourself? Is Erica on the call? I think Erica's just dropped off at the moment. So Tariq, would you, Abel, would you like to go ahead?
Okay. Hi, I'm Abel. I'm in year 9 and I go to St. Iltid's High School. I enjoy playing football and other sports.
Okay, thank you. And then, Erica, would you like to introduce yourself? You just need to come off mute.
Okay. Hi guys, I'm Erica. I go to Corpus Christi and I'm in year 8. I like listening to music and watching anime.
Thank you. And then Amina, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Amina. I'm a second year fashion communications student at Liverpool and I'm 20.
Yeah, and then Mahala. Okay.
Hi, I'm Mahala. I'm a second year environmental science student from Liverpool and I'm 21.
Okay, thank you. So I will ask the younger children some questions first. So Erin, what do you understand by the words COVID-19 and pandemic? Oh, you need to come off mute.
What I understand by the word pandemic is that it is a pandemic that is defined as an epidemic of an infectious disease occurring worldwide or over a very wide area, crossing international boundaries and affecting a large number of people. What I understand by the word COVID-19 is that it is an infection with or disease caused by coronavirus. CO stands for corona, VI stands for virus, and D stands for disease.
Thank you, Erin. That was a very good answer. So Tariq, has there been many changes in your life since the beginning of this pandemic?
Yes, I have not been doing the stuff I used to be doing, and like I haven't been like as fit as I used to be doing the stuff that I wanted to be doing, and I like now, but now there's some good points as like spending time with my family and doing activities with them.
Okay, so you said you haven't been doing the things you've wanted to do. So what kind of things were they? Were they sports or socializing?
Like there was school, football, and more other stuff.
Okay. And then Erin, do you feel like you've missed out on some things as well? Erin, you're on mute again.
I think what has changed has made me feel a bit worried and affecting a lot of my loved ones.
Yeah.
I think I got a bit worried. Could I please start again, please?
Yeah, that's fine. Remember, there are no wrong answers.
I think what has happened has made me feel a bit worried and scared because a lot of my loved ones are being affected by the virus and are worrying my family.
Okay, so that's a good point. You've mentioned feeling quite worried. Would you say you felt worried at all, Tariq? Tariq, I think you're on mute.
Please may you say that question again?
Yeah, so I just said that Erin mentioned feeling quite worried during this pandemic. Would you say that you felt the same way?
Yeah, yes, I have, because like my loved ones have been affected by this, and I haven't been going outside, and other stuff have been happening, and but at home I've got to know I've got to bond with my family more and know my culture.
Okay, so that is a very good point. So there have been some positives as well as negatives then, haven't there?
Yeah.
Okay. And do you feel like you've missed out on anything?
I think I have, because I don't know how to explain it.
It's okay. You can take your time.
Because this has made me feel like very sad, and I've missed out on all my loved ones, like going to my cousins, my families, and we were gonna book a holiday this month or next month, but we weren't able because of this COVID, and it's getting really serious now.
Okay. And then finally, Erin, do you feel like there's anything you have missed out on due to the pandemic?
I think I have missed out on being able to see a tutor and learn how to play the violin, because I was quite excited to play the violin. So I think that has made me feel a bit like I have missed out on something that could have made me enjoy being able to play an instrument.
Yeah. Okay. So then thank you for that, Erin and Tariq. I'm going to ask a few questions to Abel and Erica now. So Abel, if you'd like to start, I'd like to ask you, how do you think COVID-19 has affected your life?
I think COVID-19 has affected my life by like I can't go out as much. I can't socialize with other people, and and it's been hard because football has been an issue now. Meeting up with others, so, and school has been a struggle, and it's harder, but I think we can cope.
Okay, so you said school has been a struggle. Why has that been a struggle for you?
It's been a struggle because the teachers are not there to to explain further. They put work on the website, and we need help, and we need to more further knowledge.
Yeah.
So I think that's a big issue.
So do you feel that learning on Zoom is a lot different to face-to-face teaching?
Yes, because we can't ask questions during the Zoom call.
Yeah. And do you feel like there could be an easier way than asking the questions on a Zoom call? Like, would you prefer to email in the questions to your teacher, or would you just prefer to come back into the schools?
I think I just school.
Okay. And then, Erica, how do you feel that the COVID-19 pandemic has affected your life?
I would say it's affected my life because since I was in year 8 now, then I started to become more aware of what's going around in my school and different people and meeting them. But now, since coronavirus has made me stay at home, then I can't socialize with people and make new friends. And yeah, that's a little bit hard. And also, school has been pretty hard as well, since I'm also trying to learn new things, new topics, but I can't go into those topics as fast as I could in school, in class with my teacher, because I have to learn it at home. And I'm also not able to ask the teachers as well as I could in class, because when I'm at school, I can ask them straight away if I need any help. But because I have to email them or wait until there's an online class, then it's pretty hard to learn new topics in school.
Okay. And you mentioned that you were in year 8, so in year 7 is when the pandemic would have started. Do you think that has affected you making new friends in your new school?
Yeah, I would say so, because I was just starting to understand who's around me, the different types of schools that I'm going to be seeing a lot, since there's a lot of different schools going into Corpus Christi. So I don't get to make as much friends as I could have. I also, since it was in the middle of the school year where I had to go into lockdown, so it affected my learning a lot and made me learn much more slower.
Yeah. Okay. And April, you're in year 9. Do you feel that the pandemic and not being in face-to-face learning has affected what you might pick for your GCSEs next year?
Yeah, I think it has. I'm not sure of what we're gonna pick, and like as I said before, we have to. If I want to ask them something, I maybe have to email them, ask it during a call.
Yeah.
It's a bit hard, because if this carries on, I don't know what's going to happen with our GCSE results, and yeah, it's been a struggle for the year above us as well.
Okay, so you feel that not being able to fully engage with learning means that you might not be able to pick all the subjects you wanted to, or you might not have enough exposure to these subjects to be able to pick them for your GCSEs.
Yeah, I'm not as developed in that subject, as because my learning has been slowed down due to COVID, and I think the subjects we'll be able to choose will vary as well because of COVID.
Okay, so that's a very good point. So then I would ask you, Erica, how has the pandemic affected you as a family?
I would say it's affected us as a family in a positive way and a negative way. I would say a negative way that now, since we're all stuck at home, we have nothing to do, then it's pretty boring, and we're just sitting at home doing nothing and not learning as quick as we could have. And also could have affected us positively, because actually we get to spend more quality time with our family, so we can do stuff together. And especially since before we were so caught up in talking to our friends and doing schoolwork, doing normal work, that we weren't spending as much time with our family as we could have. But now, since we have so much time on our hands, we can spend time with our family.
Okay. And Abel, you're nodding. Do you agree with what Erica says?
Yes. I think the pandemic has brought my family closer together, and we're spending more time. And it's, I think, but there is a negative, that we don't have enough devices for our homework, so it's been hard. We have to share, but otherwise, yeah, our family has been drawn closer.
Okay, so it seems that everyone feels that they've had a stronger relationship with their family since the beginning of the pandemic, which is a very good point. Abel, you mentioned not having enough devices. So do you think your school could have done more to support you during the pandemic? Maybe help you by providing some more devices or less online work?
I think they should do that, but we've booked one. I think it's just arrived now, but it's more faster. It's more faster than before. So I think it was a good idea to.
Okay, that's very good. So I know you have two brothers, Abel. Do you find it difficult sometimes to concentrate with everyone being in the same house, or have you worked out a system so that you can all do your schoolwork separately?
I find it hard to concentrate because there's so many things to distract you. So, it's because we're just using the internet. We're free to do our work, and it's quite distracting. My brothers are there as well, so they're more of a distraction.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think we need to make like a system where we are separated so I don't get distracted. It's easy.
Okay, so yeah, that is a very good point about creating a system. Erica, would you say you feel the same way? Do you find it hard sometimes to concentrate at home, or have you got a system worked out where you can all concentrate on your work separately?
Yeah, I also find it pretty hard since usually I get pretty annoyed, especially on things I'm trying really hard to concentrate on, and there's so much noise going around that I can't concentrate as well as I could have in lessons. So yeah, it is kind of difficult, but also I feel like yeah, we should make a system where like we can find a way for maybe different times where I can work and different times where my sister can work as well.
Okay, so yeah, that is another good point. I know from my own experience that it can be very difficult trying to concentrate when you're at home working. So I live with my parents, and when the three of us are on a call, it can be a little bit frustrating. So if we move away from school now, I just want to know, how do you feel that the pandemic has affected your mental health, Erica, if it has at all?
I would say it's affected my mental health because since we're stuck here watching others lose their loved ones and watching so many things, so many bad things happening at this time, that it's hard to stay happy and carry on going. So yeah, I feel like it has affected my mental health a lot, and also I feel like it might affect other people's mental health as well, because everyone else is also losing their loved ones, and also the stress of keeping up with the grades that you're in right now in school is also pretty hard, especially when you're not understanding. So it does affect mine and probably other people's mental health a lot.
Okay. And Abel, would you say that you feel the same, or would you feel differently towards this?
Yeah, I agree. And also, I think this pandemic has made me more aware of my surroundings. and so like I hand sanitize a lot and make sure I'm more clean. But I feel for people my age, I think anxiety is going to be a main issue, and depression. People are losing loved ones. School is a struggle, and we're not getting to do things we want to do. So I feel it's harder for them.
Okay. And then, is there any support that you feel like you could get from your school or your family or your friends that would really help you?
I think they should do like separate Zoom calls, like one-on-ones, to make sure you're okay and to help you get through this pandemic. I think that would be a big help.
Okay, so you think that would be good for the teachers to have a one-on-one meeting with you so you can discuss your worries about school and life and then find a way to progress without it affecting your education?
Yeah.
Okay, so that is a very good point. I think Che, she's a teacher, will be quite interested to hear that. Erica, how do you feel your school or your friends or your family could support you a little bit more?
I would also agree that, yeah, we should have one-on-one Zoom calls. Like, I feel it would be better because when you're in online classes, then it's a bit embarrassing when you don't understand something and everyone else does. So some people might not ask questions because everyone else already gets it. So I feel like one-on-one conversations with your teacher would also be good. So you don't have to feel embarrassed about not understanding things. And I also feel that the school should be checking on us more often, especially since a lot of bad things are happening right now. So a lot of people could be dealing with a lot. So it would be good to hear that someone is looking out for them.
Okay. So you think it would be good if you had someone you could talk to from your school just about anything you might be worried about?
Yeah.
Okay. And would you talk to your family about these things, or would you like to talk to somebody different?
I feel like it would be better to talk to someone different because they might have like more understanding of why you're feeling that way, because I feel like parents, they're also going through their own struggles as well, but they might not tell their children. So they might be a little bit confused as to why you're feeling like that, and might be dealing with their own stuff, so they won't be able to help you as much as someone else.
Okay, so you feel like you don't want to add more struggles to your parents by discussing your own?
Yeah, I feel like we should make sure that, yeah, we're talking to our parents, but then also making sure that the parents are also talking as well, so we can understand that we're not the only ones going through this as well.
Okay, I think that is a very interesting point, and I think a lot of parents on this call will be, happy to hear that and will really reflect on that. Abel, do you feel the same way about discussing issues with your parents?
I agree, and also disagree. I think it's very good to talk to your parents about issues since they know you the best. But whereas I think talking to people your age and having a more relatable issue,
Yeah.
It'll help more than talking to your parents.
Yeah, I think you both have some very good points there. I think it can be very difficult to talk to your parents because sometimes you feel maybe your struggles aren't as big as their struggles. You don't want your parents to worry. But then on the other hand, like Abel says, sometimes you feel maybe they won't understand you and you just like to talk to someone a bit more closer in age. And I think that's both some very good points. So I think from all of our, both our primary school and secondary school children, we've had some really interesting points and some very good answers. So I'd just like to thank them for their time. Now I'm going to ask the uni students some questions. And if anyone has any other questions, feel free to add them in the chat and we can address them after. So Amina, I would just like to ask you, how has this pandemic affected you?
It's affected me in a lot of ways. I think it's affected basically every aspect of your life. Specifically like uni, because my course has been online since last March, so since like the very beginning of the pandemic. And with it being like a practical studio-based course, we haven't had access to all the resources and all the studio space and things that we were promised at the beginning, but they haven't cut fees or anything. We haven't really been refunded for our accommodation if we're not using it this lockdown. Yeah, a lot of things like that.
So I know that you're in your second year of university, so your first year was also affected by the pandemic. Do you feel that over the summer or during the time that the universities were shut, they could have done more to prepare to support you throughout this pandemic?
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of things that they've done, or rather actually not done, has shown how unorganized they've been with it all. So the first term, so from March last year, that was the end of my first year when the pandemic first hit, and everything was online, and it was kind of like a shambles, like kind of rough around the edges, but kind of like I was expecting it to be, because we were kind of all really uncertain about it back then. And then over the summer, I feel like they could have had a lot more time to like prepare and properly sort out this online communications issues, like well-being issues, things that they know are going to be an issue for students. And they had a lot of time over the summer, because my course ended in April, so we had all of those months. And it shows a lot of the fact that they haven't sent us even like any materials or resources, and only this lockdown, like this term, they've asked for our addresses to send us things. I think it shows that over the summer they didn't really put much thought into that. I think the fact that they're not really communicating with us well online, it's very, very similar to the first term of the pandemic. So it shows that there's not much development in their communication or their organisation. And I think they could have done a lot more to, you know, like progress with that.
Okay. And I know you've mentioned having to buy your own resources that were normally provided by your university. And, I do know that you go to university in Liverpool, so you are paying for accommodation as well as the fees for a full, I think it's £9,000 you pay per year for uni course. Do you feel like you've had enough support financially? Like, do you feel like the universities are doing enough to offset the financial burden that students are facing due to having to pay full fees and full rent, even though they can't be there?
I don't really think so. They've put some funds and things you can apply for financial support. However, it only applies to you with very specific, what's the word? Like, you only qualify with very specific like criteria. And I think generally, so we got sent an email very recently saying they're not thinking about pushing fees to be cut or anything. They're not like they're kind of pushing more for the government to do that rather than the universities themselves, which I think is a bit of a mistake, because I don't think the government are going to be very willing to do it at this point anyway, when we're seeing what's happening to the economy. And I understand the unis aren't going to be able to refund full fees for everyone, but some of the money going back, I think it would be more suitable, or at least just some sort of compensation for all students rather than just certain students. And I do understand there are some people in worse positions because of the pandemic. However, it has affected everyone. It has affected all of the students, and it has affected our uni experience, which I think needs to be addressed properly financially.
Okay, so the university that you're attending has suggested that this is a government issue.
Yes.
Do you feel that the government is doing enough to support you, as a student, as a young person, or even just the, population as a whole?
No, honestly, I don't. I think specifically the students, I think that we were blamed a lot for the second wave of COVID. When they sent schools back, they sent everyone back to their jobs. They were doing the eat out to help out, but they were still blaming specifically students for the rise in cases. Which, like some students would have not been following the rules, but then you have those in every age group. So I think the like kind of blaming students for the pandemic while also like not doing anything to really support them or help them basically kind of saying, yeah, you're still paying £9 but what are you going to do? It's online, you're still getting the same stuff even though we're not. It's kind of feels like it's just been shoved to the side a bit. Yeah, I think the government could have done a lot more to kind of like give people more support in ways that like it's really needed, and you know, lock down more and earlier. Yeah.
So you mentioned like students have been scapegoated a bit for, spreading the pandemic. Do you feel that, so not only that treatment of students, but also the kind of experiences they're having at uni, the kind of isolation that some might feel if they are stuck in their halls and they can't go back to their family, do you feel like this is having an effect on their mental health?
Definitely. I don't think I've spoken to any students who it's not affected their mental health. I think even if you're at home with your family, it's more the feeling of you can't leave anywhere. And if I think it's affected students at home, because if you're having to do uni work at home, I know that I get in a very like holiday mindset, like, oh, I'm at home, I can relax, like my parents will do things for me kind of thing. I don't feel as like in the zone in a way to do my uni work, and then I start slacking off and then I get stressed out because I'm slacking. But then equally, I think in your uni house, if you're trapped there by yourself and you can't leave. So I was alone in my uni house for about a month before I came back for Christmas. And it really does affect your mental health because you know that there's no one you could really talk to, like you can't physically go and just see people anymore. And if you want a break from your uni work, you can't, like there's just not really a break. It's very like full on and like isolating.
Yeah. So a lot of universities have, sort of mental health and well-being programs. Do you think the support given has been adequate?
I would have liked to seen it been pushed more. We've only recently spoken, so we had like a survey and they gave us, what do you think we can do better for like mental health and things like that. Quite a while before Christmas, like a couple months before Christmas when we started back, I think they sent this out. And we suggested things like have them, like put them on the Zoom calls with us, like the wellbeing officers and whatever, put them on Zoom calls with us so we can get to know them and feel more comfortable, rather than saying, okay, here's a phone number, you call this if you're feeling sad or something like that, which they kind of just gave us a phone number and email and been like, okay, contact these people. Like that was our tutors kind of being like, okay, that's their issue to deal with. I think that like tutors themselves could have taken a lot more responsibility for students' well-being. I've had like peers on my course who have taken time off for their mental health, and they've not been checked up on at all during the time that they've taken off, which I think they should have been really. Just like an email or something sent to you, like it's just nice to know that someone's thinking about you, or like your tutors who's supposed to kind of like be supporting you through this whole time, that they're kind of like doing their job essentially. It's like that kind of thing.
Okay. So I think almost everyone on this call has said that they would have liked to have seen a bit more support from their teachers just to come in and check in on them, both sort of, for their mental health and for their education. So what are 3 priorities that you think should really have been addressed by the university, Amina?
So I would say the fees, the uni fees, I think that's a really big one for a lot of students. I think that because we're paying the full amount for a course that we're not really being provided with, like the facilities, the studios, whatever, if we just shouldn't be paying that much for something that's not really being given to us. I think mental health support is a big one, like just having like checking in on students who are, even if it's just students who are taking time off for their mental health, but just being a bit more aware with that and like checking in a bit more, just paying a bit more attention to individuals who are struggling a bit more with things. And the third one, I'd say online communication, I think could be developed a lot. I think we've had a lot of time to kind of improve this and to like get it up to speed, but they kind of haven't done any development on it. So online communications, like responding to emails, I've emailed tutors and not had response for like weeks before. I think yes. With Zoom calls, I think yeah, setting up one-on-one things, even like once a month or so for something like my course where it's a lot of independent work, just to like check in and see if there's any questions that you don't want to obviously say in front of everyone, and things that you don't really think of while everyone's talking, and you can't really talk over people on a Zoom call because it's not going to work. Yeah, I think online communications needs to be a lot more strong as well.
Okay. So then finally, I just want to ask you, how do you feel that the pandemic and, you know, your experience at university has affected your future?
I think it's made it a lot more uncertain, and I think it's limited a lot of pathways that you can go down. So with my course, it's very broad. There's a lot of, because it's communications, it's like all of that spectrum. But I think it's limited a lot of jobs to social media and digital presence. And within that, it will have limited it again, because I think a lot of companies have gone bust and a lot of people have been made redundant, like a lot of jobs have been lost. So I think there's a lot less jobs going, and I think they're also a lot more limited. So yeah, it's created a lot of uncertainty for my future, definitely.
Okay, well, thank you, Amina. That was very insightful. So I think our final guest is Mahala. So I'd just like to ask you, Mahala, then, if you just want to come into frame a little bit more. How do you think the pandemic has affected you?
Well, it's been really tough, like social and the social aspect of being a student, seeing as we moved up, like especially with Liverpool, we moved up in like the time frame they gave us, and then immediately got put into tier 4 conditions, and were told no interacting with people outside of who we lived with, which, when in context with like a lecture work, it meant there was no real interacting with anyone on your course. We couldn't meet up or go to the library to work on any kind of assignments or go through lecture material together, and because it's not quite the same over Zoom, and some of us don't have the best Wi-Fi when trying to connect to Zoom stuff anyways.
Yeah. Okay, and then do you support from your university during this time?
Well, support-wise, the most they've done is, well, they've sent out every few weeks kind of surveys on everyone's well-being, but they're mainly just in the format of like, oh, agree, neutral, disagree, and it's just questions like, are you struggling? Are you engaging? And the most they do, they'll send you that email, and then you get an email like 5 days later saying, why haven't you filled in this survey? And then they do nothing with it. Like if you say you're struggling, no one comes back to you. If you contact the student experience team saying that you're struggling with something, they just send you an extenuating circumstances application link, and then they never get back to you on it. Like there's nothing else after that.
Okay, so you feel that a lack of communication is quite a big problem. So would this be academically or to do with your mental health, or is this both?
I'd say it's both, because mental health wise, people don't get any feedback after applying for like, you know, relaxed standards and stuff. And then academics wise, especially on my course, we've had like a few issues with assignments suddenly being given shorter deadlines, and then when you try and ask your lecturer for help because you're having issues on like certain parts of an assignment, and you have to ask them over Canvas, you could wait for like an entire week and you get nothing, or you could try and email them and not get a response. And I think at one point we were bringing it up in tutor group calls, and then having a tutor email the module leader because we just weren't getting anything.
Okay. So you're also in your second year of university, and you've mentioned that you haven't been able to do lab work as you would normally be doing, and you haven't done as many sort of field trips and stuff. Are you worried that this may affect your final year, not having enough experience?
Yeah, I think so, because I think this year would have been laying like more of the groundwork for our third year kind of dissertations, where we pick what topic we do and then go and carry out any field work we need for that. Like they've really been struggling. or just not doing well in finding a replacement for any fieldwork or practical modules. And yeah, it's seeing as it looks like the pandemic's going to be continuing into third year, it's not going to be going well when we get there, that's for sure.
Okay. And I know that you had a flatmate who tested positive for COVID-19 and your flat had to isolate for 2 weeks. Do you feel like you have a support system in place for not being able to, leave the house and go shopping and sort of things like that?
Well, seeing as we weren't actually allowed to interact with other houses, the most we could do at the time was we'd had to email into the university. So we'd emailed in, given the student ID numbers and like phone numbers of all of us who were in the house, saying that like, hi, we're self-isolating. And then the only thing we actually got was just calls from the track and trace app that just kind of amounted to, hi, you know that one of your flatmates has COVID? And we're like, yes. And then it was just, okay, do you have symptoms? No. Are you staying inside? Yes. Okay, bye. And that was all we got. We didn't have like anyone who could go and get food for us, and we resorted in the end to one of the flatmates, her mum came down and just like brought a bunch of like spare tin stuff that she had in her kitchen for us. Like, there was no other support really.
Okay, so you've mentioned quite a few negatives. Would you say there were any positives with your university experience? Anything they did well in supporting you, or even just any positives you felt throughout the pandemic?
Well, they did. They increased like the number of tutor groups we'd be doing, so like we could actually speak more with the like the people who were doing the same pathways as us, especially in second year for environmental science. It starts splitting a lot more clearly. So you kind of knew like at least maybe 4 or 5 people who were doing the exact same stuff as you, and that at least kind of gave you the knowledge of like anyone you could possibly message if you had an assignment and you're both like struggling. But I feel like most of it, there was just kind of really big feeling of a lack of support for most uni stuff.
Okay. So again, I think across the board, everyone's feeling like they've, had a bit of a lack of support from their schools and their universities. So you have mentioned, your third year and not doing enough lab work. Do you feel like this might affect your future beyond university?
I think it will, just as like weren't applying for jobs, it'll be obvious that with the pandemic we wouldn't have had as much experience in working under lab conditions or carrying out the experiments and stuff you need for research. So everyone's like a bit stressed about how that's going to turn out for us, I know.
Okay. And then finally, I'll just ask you, what do you think the 3 main priorities that universities should have addressed to support their students?
Well, I think there could be a lot better communication, like academics wise, and then when it comes to asking for support and getting any feedback on that. I'd say also planning out the alternatives to the stuff that should have been in person, like practicals or fieldwork, because they've definitely sort of been struggling on what could actually work as an alternative, and oftentimes they drop a module and change it for something else. And then finally, I suppose fees, like because we're paying 9K for something that's basically just an online course now, after they told us over the summer that no, definitely we're getting at least some of it as in person, and then that never turned out.
Okay, so I think it was mentioned by Amina that a lot of universities seem to think that the fees are a government issue. So then do you think the government has supported students and young people enough, or done enough to sort of combat the pandemic?
I wouldn't say so, because a lot of the attitude about the pandemic has really just been blaming students for like the spikes in cases, even though all the students travelling to their university cities is almost exclusively on the advice of the government and the unis working together.
So you think quite similarly to Amina that you think the university students have been scapegoated a little bit for the spread of the pandemic. Okay, so I think that's quite interesting. So yeah, I think that's all the questions we have today from me anyway, for our young people. And just before we move on to questions in the comment section, I think we have a teacher on the call, Luchema, who'd like to introduce herself and sort of say a little bit from her perspective about how she feels the pandemic has been for not only the education system, but just how she's seen the, young people, the effect it's had on young people. So Che, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hello, I'm Luchema. I am a secondary school teacher based in Bristol. So I teach from the ages between 11 and 18, currently teaching mainly GCSE and A-level students. My subjects are health and social care, sociology and psychology, and a little bit of PSHE and bits in between. I think firstly, I'm just really impressed by the insight of our primary school and secondary school students here. And actually they raised a lot of issues that I as a teacher was sort of going to comment on. So I've made a couple of notes here. So it's really interesting to hear Abel talk about the issues of like the limits of online teaching, the problem of making progress and, being able to make the right choices for next year. Erica was really important. Well, it was interesting when Erica was talking about the fact that she's found herself limited in her socializing. And then also we've got Erin and Tarek talking about the missed opportunities that they've got, which lead into kind of my experiences as a teacher trying to teach through COVID. I think the biggest thing that has struck me as an educator is that the government had this idea that we would remote learn and that was the solution, but obviously in practice it's very different. The biggest thing that I've noticed has been sort of a deprivation gap. So some students will have access to Wi-Fi, multiple devices, a room that they can work in quietly with little distraction. They may also have parents who are able to step in and help them if needed. But then there are lots of students where that is not the case. So it may be that they've got a huge number of siblings in quite a small space. They may be one device that has been split between many different siblings. Some parents still have to work regardless, and so there's that additional stress of not only having to do your remote learning independently, but then also needing to maybe look after younger siblings to make sure that the chores are done to support the parents who are already finding it very stressful. And it's very interesting to note as well that there seems to be the assumption that children are sort of unaware of what's going on, and absolutely, as our young people have pointed out, they are aware that their parents are stressed. And that obviously is creating quite a difficult home dynamic. So although the idea of remote learning seems great on paper, the reality is very different. And also I think for some students, school is safety. So for some students whose home lives are very unsettled and there is a lot of chaos and neglect and things like that, school is that safety. So for them to be without that friendly face or that friendly word that they hear every day it has a huge damaging effect to their mental health. And when individuals were talking about family losses, I find that that's the biggest issue I've noticed has been how the family losses are affecting BME families. So BME families who often may live in multiple generation housing, they're the students that have been off the longest. Okay? They're the ones that have to make sure they're looking after their grandparents. We also find that BME families in particular often will have their parents are doing those public facing jobs. So they are working as taxi drivers or bus drivers. They are out in the public, they're working for the NHS. They don't really have the choice of staying at home. So they've kind of got that double risk, not only of being public facing, but also being BME. And we sort of know that the disadvantages that entails. So there's obviously a lot of negatives with it. And it's been interesting to see the responses. So I've noticed in particular, we've got a subset of students in my school who've almost learned to play the system, where actually they have enough resources, they've got a good enough home environment, but they just can't be bothered. So what I've noticed that people are now using the term, saying that they are overwhelmed, and that almost, they sort of found out that language, and I noticed that some students are exploiting that to get out of doing the work, which they are perfectly able to do, which is really unfair compared to those students who are trying to work but are struggling. And also there's this shift from some parents as well who seem to think that, who are putting pressure on us as teachers, in thinking that extenuating circumstances will mean that we can bump up their grades by several grades. So I have had some students saying, well, you know, it's been really difficult for them, but they deserve an A. And as an educator, you've got to be able to prove that you can get that A. You've got to prove that you can get that B. We can't just magic it or almost be pressured, or to some extent even bullied, actually, into sort of giving individuals grades and things. So, I mean, there's so much going on, and I'm sort of saying that quite, I'm just saying a lot in not really in a particular order, I assume. But what I will stress is that schools have remained open, and we as teachers are trying our absolute best to do everything. There are teachers who are buying their students books and textbooks and pens and paper, who are donating their own devices to particular students. Obviously, we'd love to be able to chat to our students much more, but there's a fine balance we've got in terms of safeguarding, so protecting young people, protecting ourselves, and well as delivering help, so that we've still got that fine balance here. We are using, as for example, my school, we are using our own budget to pay for lots of things that the government said they would do. So for example, giving out the multiple devices, we really haven't received money, to the point that it's the local parents in our school who are saying, we will happily contribute £25 and put that towards devices, which is really, really shocking. But people who are already furloughed and struggling are happy to kind of part with money to do something that the government should do. So it's stressful for everyone, and the main cause of the stress, I think, is just the ineffectual organising. And I just completely commend our young people who have faced this so well, especially with lockdown 3, especially with not knowing what's going on. And I think, if anything, it's just shown us how resilient they are, and really they're probably a better example to us than the adults and the people in power, because they've just cracked on with it. So I'm looking forward to great things as a response to what they've had to put up with. So I think that's my view as a teacher. That's my piece.
Okay, I think that's some very good points there. I do have a few questions I would just like to ask you.
Yes.
So you mentioned there about being a deprivation gap, which I think we all know is definitely a thing. Who do you think is responsible for bridging that gap? Do you think the responsibility should lie with the schools or with the government?
I mean, it has to be with the government, because the government gives the schools the resources, and the schools know the best way to bridge those deprivation gaps. The problem is that our funding has been reduced, but we're still being told to sort out a problem that actually we haven't created. Of course, we're here to support, but you know, if parents are being paid low wages, that's not due to us. Okay, but however, if a parent is being paid a low wage, the least we could do as school is use the money that we've been given to support that parent and that family and that child's education in any way that we can. That's what I would argue.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you mentioned as well about the grades, and I know last year there was a lot of noise about the A-level grades being graded, I believe, on where you live more than what you had actually worked as. So firstly, do you think that was fair, and do you think that more could have been done, or there was a better way that these children should have been graded?
Yeah. In terms of did I think that measurement was, I absolutely thought that measurement was not fair. However, the bulk of in school, we track your progress from as soon as you begin to the very end. Unfortunately, one of the ways in which they measure it is by the sort of average that students in your area come from. So this is kind of ingrained in how schools mark progress. We may not pay particular attention to it as teachers, because we know there are lots more other factors that affect the progress that you make. However, the people who do the data, who are part of the government, that's what they look at, even though we would say this is a really silly measure, it's not the best measure. So I think using a postcode to judge someone's progress, or should be progress, I think is very, very ill-advised. In terms, sorry, could you say the second part of the question? It was teacher grades.
Yeah, so do you think there was a better way that they could have judged the grades?
Yeah, so the first way they got us to judge it was through that algorithm, which was a mixture of what we thought combined with this mathematical formula, which didn't really make sense and wasn't very fair. I think the best way to judge them would be through teacher assessment. So we are always assessing a student's progress because we see the work they do, because we give them feedback, because we have that content, we are the best judge. We can provide the best judgment of where that student would be, but also we have the data to back it up. So we can say, you know, you've been performing at a level 6, or you've been performing at a B. Therefore, we would assume that with everything in your favor, and if you carried in the way that you were working, you would end up with this grade. So it's almost quite insulting, actually, to think as a professional, our judgment was ignored, because we do know what's best. And I don't think that would really happen in any other profession. I don't think you tell a doctor that they're being rubbish, or a fireman that they're doing it wrong. But in teaching, it seems to be fine to do so.
So you mentioned that the algorithm had, it took into account people's sort of area codes, like where they live, and you're a teacher in Bristol. So do you feel like this had a significantly sort of negative effect on BME students?
Yes, so I think a bit of context is needed. So Bristol it's about 13% BME, but it's also a very highly segregated city. And what we find is that the largest percentage of the BME students live in the very low income areas. So they're already sort of at the bottom of that scale, so to speak. So I think using that method certainly does disadvantage a lot of particular hardworking, but also very bright students who are being dragged down because the way in which the formula is based on. And then at the other end of the spectrum, we have a lot of white students who live in the more affluent areas whose grades were somehow increased, even if they did not have that same level of attainment taking place. So I certainly feel that BME students in Bristol were disadvantaged, and I'm quite confident that that is a similar situation happening all over the country, even if they have different levels of demographic.
Yeah, I think everyone on this call can agree that where someone lives and their economic status is not an indication of how academically talented they are at all. So lastly, I would just like to ask you, because you brought up teachers sort of trying to support students out of their own pocket. Do you feel the government has supported teachers throughout this pandemic?
No, no, I think there doesn't seem to be a clear plan. And I think every big decision that's been made has been very badly executed. We don't know what the planning is, but for example, before Christmas, the day after we officially broke up, that's when they had the big announcement that we would not be coming back. And then even then we came back in January, and then they said actually no one's coming back at all. So we don't know what's happening. They're saying that we have to, before Christmas, they said we had to deliver the testing, but they never said how that was going to be, who was testing, how was it going to be done, were we having to provide for it? So and because there's no planning, each school is doing their own thing. So we're trying to think, okay, how does it work best for us? So then we've got a problem where schools are doing very different practices because there hasn't been a guideline at all. So I don't think there's much support. And I think the biggest problem is that the politicians don't realise the diversity of educational experience. It's easy to say, right, work from home, on the understanding that you've got a laptop, your own room, and your house is nice and warm and you've got food in the cupboard. But for a lot of students, that's going to be a very different situation. And I think the people in charge are just completely closed off to actually how the majority of people live. And that reflects in what they say needs to be done by schools.
Okay, well, thank you for that. I think overall we've had some very, very good answers and some very insightful answers on this call. So I'd just like to thank everyone who I've sort of interviewed for taking part, and I'd just like to hand back to Dr. Naseeb now.
All right, so thank you very much, Alex, for that wonderful, conversation. I mean, it's very good to hear from our young people, their experiences and their struggle with COVID. And I think, like they put it, they handled it very well, even with the difficult circumstances. So I think we, the grown-up, I think we may learn a few things or two from their experience and things. So I know it's tough. Yeah, taking all the joy of going to uni or the joy of going to school. So I think they need more support. I think as parents, we should try to support as much as we can. at home, and encourage the government, the schools, or the universities to engage, put a bit more support to our young people. I think there's one question in the chat which is asking how has social media helped during the lockdown? If anyone want to take that, Alex, or I take that, or one of the universal, the primary school guys can take it. Someone to answer that?
Yeah, I can answer that, and then we can see if anyone else has anything they'd like to add. So for me, I think social media has been a bit of a double-edged sword. On one way, it's great because we can now talk to each other, we can FaceTime each other, you know, for what's essentially almost free, and it's really helped people feel connected in a very isolating time. But I think there can be a lot of not only misinformation, but scaremongering on social media. So I think that can add to a lot of people's anxieties.
Okay, I got Tariq gets his hand up. So Tariq, the floor is yours.
I think social media helps because you can see the news and see what's going on. Say if there was like another lockdown and you wouldn't know about it if you hadn't social media or not, and that would really help.
Okay, thank you very much. Emily Sai, with the hands up.
I feel like social media has helped us during COVID-19 because a lot of people are now going and posting about how they are going through COVID-19, and it's helping a lot of people kind of come together as a community and also kind of share their experiences and what they had to go through. And it's also kind of helped them to realize other stuff as well, since social media is filled with a lot of things like baking different foods that you didn't know of. Then now you have that time to bake, you have that time to cook, you have that time to learn all these stuff that you didn't know how to before.
That's fantastic, seeing the positive things out of this pandemic. That's a brilliant take onto that. And then another question here is, have young people who have started new jobs during the pandemic, what their experience starting a new job during the pandemic? If anyone started a job in that time. Alex, you know anyone?
Yeah.
Amina?
So in my own experience, I had started prior to the pandemic. And I work in cybersecurity, so I was actually quite lucky. We haven't experienced much shrinkage in our sector. In fact, we've been booming. But I know quite a few of my friends have started new jobs during this pandemic, and there is a bit of a fear there where you feel like very worried, more so than normal. If you mess up, you will go, because the economy is not doing great. You're the newest person there, and more often than not, you're the least experienced. So you think if there's going to be a job cut, you will be the first person to go. And then on the other hand, I have some friends who have started new jobs and they really just felt, I don't like this job isn't for me, but they're too afraid to start a new job and go through the, usual 6-month probation time. As, you don't want to lose a job, you don't want to sort of get 3 months into a new job and for them to sort of need to cut costs and, you'll eventually get out of a job. So I think it is quite hard to be starting new jobs during this time, and I think that would be for any age group, not just young people, but definitely the lack of experience can hinder some young people.
Okay, thank you. I think Dr. Hamza got a question, then I'll come to you, Chande, after Dr. Hamza. Dr. Hamza, come in.
I have a question. First of all, I'm very happy for this program and all the participants. And my question is, do you think this social media has made you more afraid and getting the negative information, maybe from WhatsApp or Instagram, and all the conspiracy or maybe going to hospital? How the social media has impacted you, because I think most of you will be more frightened with a lot of false information and the frightening news which people are posting around. If you can give us your experience as well, I'll be happy to hear as a doctor here.
Okay, Abel, are you going to answer that? You got your hand up?
Yeah. I think the false information and scams, I think they're very frightening for people. Misleading information. But I think that social media has also have some positive, and it's been useful. They're sharing information, but there is false information, so it's there's a bit of positive and negative.
Okay, I think that Tariq, get Tariq.
I think it might be, you might be worried sometimes, but at like a point, it might help because you're more aware of what's happening in the world.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Okay, Chande Kigwedilo, you got a hand up?
Hey, sorry, I was trying to figure out how to raise my hand and then the question passed. But it was basically the question about young people just getting into the job force. So I graduated in 2020. So my final semester, that's when lockdown happened. And I had similar experience to what the other university students are saying about lack of support and lack of information of what's going on, especially with how everything was shut down so fast. But to come to like the job market itself, I think I'm getting a taster, and I think lots of us who've graduated are getting a taster of what it was like to join the job market in the 2008 crash. And it's like you've got lots of jobs that are presented, but the competition is more fierce than ever. And I was just lucky that I applied, I think a year before I even started third year. And I waited a whole year to get the position that I'm in now. But if I compare that to my peers, who mostly, they usually apply for jobs at least a semester before graduation, a lot of them are unemployed and a lot of them are really struggling to find employment. And even with just a degree, like lots of opportunities have basically perished after COVID-19. International exchange programs shut down instantly, job placements gone instantly. Everything has had to be reversed back and there's no certainty of what's going to happen next. So I would say I was lucky that as well. I was in a situation where I was with an employment that were enabling me to work from home as well. That's another issue. But if you go to other students who maybe joined certain industries that are very vulnerable to the pandemic, you can see how that's impacted them so negatively. It all depends on what job you do and as well the experience. But when it comes to graduate programs and coming into the job market as a graduate during COVID-19, yeah, the competition is really harsh. And I don't know how the job market is going to be in the next 5 years in regards to this.
So thank you very much for that. Any more questions? Okay, I think before I forget, there's to encourage our young people, we have a little incentive here. There's a competition organized by the British Science Association in collaboration with the East African Education Foundation and TUHEDA. It all goes around COVID, so it's just it can be in a form of a poster or a PowerPoint presentation for about 10 slides, or it can be a photograph on COVID awareness. And the first prize, the £50 for Amazon gift vouchers, and 40 for the second, and £30 for the third place. So this for the age of 6 to 16. So I would encourage all our young people involved in our seminar today to be involved in this one, and I will send the link, and when this is recorded, I will put it on our website and somewhere in the recording of this video. So thank you very much. If there's no more questions, probably I may hand it back to Alex so she can sum up our session. Welcome, Alex.
Thank you, Dr. Nassib. So I think as a whole, we can all agree that it's been quite a stressful period for young people. And I think we've really dispelled the myth that the younger people, especially the primary school people, don't know what's going on and they don't sort of understand, because I think they actually do understand a lot more than we give them credit for. But a point that was very interesting to me was from Erica, that sometimes you might feel that you don't want to share your worries with your parents because you feel they have enough to worry about. And I wouldn't say that was anything negative towards any parent. I think it's just something we should all sort of think about, not only as parents or teachers, but also just sort of, you know, friends as well, that sometimes people don't want to bother you with their worries because they think you're, you know, worrying too much about something yourself. And another interesting point that both the primary and secondary school children have brought up is that the lack of support they have around their education. And I think we've seen both sides of the coin here, because as a teacher, Che has told us that the lack of support teachers are getting from the government means that even though teachers really are trying their best to support the children, it's not as easy as we sort of would want it to be. So I feel like going away from this session, we have a lot to think about, and we can sort of understand the young person's thoughts a bit more on this pandemic. Again, with Amina and Mahala, I think we can all just agree that the university students have not had enough support in any way. Really, I think, you know, again, we can all agree that they needed so much more support, and this must be a very stressful time for them. So I think that it would be important for us all to reflect and think not only what can we do for the young people in our lives, but as well just sort of each other. Because I think even just having that small conversation, like I could say even myself, if I just reached out to Erica and I said, how are you finding school? How are you finding things at home? How are you finding this pandemic? You know, if she opened up to me, she might feel just that little bit more confident about what is going on sort of in the world. So again, I would just really like to say that I think everyone on the school has done a very good job. And I think that we can all agree that we should sort of find it in us to be a little bit more supportive to, you know, students, teachers, you know, young people in general. I think you're on mute, Dr. Nassib.
What about now?
Yeah.
Okay, I think we would like to end the meeting right there, and thank you very much for all the young people who have taken part in this conversation, and thank you very much, Alex, for moderating this. And on that note, I mean, this will be recorded, and we're gonna share it in the next 24 hours or so. It's gonna be on our Facebook page, and it's gonna be on our YouTube channel as well. So for future watching, maybe I'm gonna put it in 2 parts because quite a long watch. So I'm gonna put it in 2 parts. So thanks very much, and I wish everyone a good. Okay, there's a question. There are a few hands up. Okay.
Sorry, I just wanted to say how impressed I am at both the resilience of the young people, particularly the university students, because they have had a lot to deal with. And I'd also like to think about the resilience of the younger children in their understanding of what's going on and how they have coped with it. I think that really does give me hope for the future, that they will understand, and they are a much more caring community. So it's very impressive. And thank you very much for all that they've done.
Bupe, come on.
Thank you. First of all, again, echoing what everybody's already said, very impressed by our younger people, all of you, right across the board. For me, being a member of staff in a university, some of these conversations has made a very uncomfortable listening. And I promise you, for my part, I will use every opportunity I get going forward to raise majority and if not all of the points you've raised today, because sometimes I know it's much more difficult for students individually to be heard. But for me, when I get the opportunity to sit in these staff meetings and we have these planning conversation, hopefully I will have the strength to express in just as much passion as you've done this evening on how wrong we have done you as students. So rather than continue to seem like I'm making excuses, I just want to highlight two things very quickly. The problem with working in a university as a member of staff, for me personally, my experience has been that the university gets the perception that you are all young adults. So they shift to the responsibility of you approaching us whenever you need help. As a member of staff, I'm not allowed to approach you or keep asking you if you need anything from me. So my advice will be, I know it's wrong to push back that responsibility to you, but never give up to speak up. Make those members of staff, such as your personal tutor, your subject tutor, and if you don't get a response from them within 3 working days, they are breaking their contract rules. We've all been instructed to respond to our young people, and that is a written down contract. 3 working days is an absolute maximum. So if your emails are going unanswered, after 3 working days, you forward that message directly to your program leader. Just make a point of finding out who your program leader is. They're responsible to make sure your subject tutor and your personal tutor are doing their job. The other point I want to raise is when it comes to things like fees and accommodation and welfare, we have what is called a student service promise. The student service promise says that as a university, we are to respond and act on any complaints that our students are making. The issue is our students make the complaints but don't do it formally. The only thing that will force the organization's hand is if those complaints are written. So in all your universities, I know you're all in different universities, and some of you are in my university. So I'm not going to mention any name to avoid retaliation on my own part, because as a member of staff, I could get in a lot of trouble by teaching you what you should be doing. But I think on this case, I'm giving you advice on what is already down as a rule of thumb. And that is, on our website, there's a complaint email where if you write and you send your email there, they have to respond to it officially. They have to log it, and it remains under the university profile to be viewed and audited by external auditors and education authorities. So therefore, it goes beyond the university, and universities don't like that. So when they have a written complaint, it's shared with anyone and everybody. And the numbers of those complaints are compared against universities. So when these league tables and performance and student satisfaction surveys come across, it's all based on this. So as soon as those complaints numbers start rising beyond 10, you will notice a sudden movement of action. So I'm urging you, I'm empowering you to be the leaders you are, stand on each other's shoulders, encourage as many of your cohorts to do the same, even if the complaint is similar. But if it comes from individuals, it counts as numbers. And it's numbers of those complaints that force reaction or resolutions. So good luck. I'm here. I will share my contact details with any of you who will come to me. I've already initiated a BME staff forum for our university, which is still very new, because for BME members of staff, we've also noticed a discrepancy on how our students are treated, especially for those who come from similar backgrounds as myself. So I am speaking on a sense that we acknowledge your complaints, and I'm so sorry that you're going through this experience, but there is ways of us fighting the system and being heard. And we need to do that together, united. So if you make the complaints in writing, we can bring them up in our staff meetings with the leadership. Thank you for listening.
Okay, thank you very much. And I think Dr. Mohammed got his hand up, and thank you very much, Bupe, for that insight. That is great. I think you're going to get a few emails from our university students. Okay, and some parents, hopefully. So Dr. Salim, please.
Oh, thank you very much. I think I should join others by saying that we are very impressed by this fantastic presentation, and it's something which I think we should continue doing, programs with young people. Just to reiterate what you said before, we encourage young people to participate in this competition. Could you give me a chance to share a screen? I mean, I could show the poster, which
yeah, if you can, because I had some technical problems. That's why I couldn't share the poster. So I will make you a co-host now. You're good to go.
Okay. So I hope you can see this. This is a shorter version.
You want to maximize
the announcement of the competition.
Maximize your screen, please. Maximize the screen so you can know.
Okay.
Yeah, hapa kwenye kona
getting better now?
Juu kulia kwenye main page. Up kwenye hapa juu. You know, you never mind. Okay.
Let me try to do that again. Anyway, it's not getting there. But what I'm trying to say, I don't know whether you can see the poster, and there is a link, an email address. So for those who are interested, we'll be sending out, as Dr. Nasibu said, but if you have any problem, please email us on this email shown here, and we'll be happy to send you the link so that you can register. We look forward to have up to 100 participants, but as I said before, we hope this will be very interesting, and please join. Thank you very much, and keep up the good work. Thank you.
I think let's beat COVID and stay safe, everyone. And we hope to have another session with our young people in the near future. Thank you very much, WAWE. I think you'll be tremendous, and we really appreciate, and we are with you all the way. Asante sana. And on that note, I can say goodbye, everyone, and until next time. Asante sana. Stay safe.
Bye.